A recent report from the New York Post details the ways that the violent Tren de Aragua gang from Venezuela have taken over and began terrorizing the streets of one of America's greatest cities, Chicago. In fact, a recent Freedom of Information Act request by our friend, the Chicago-based podcaster and investigative journalist Terry Newsome, proves that Catholic charities have been secretly colluding with the radical left-wing government of Chicago to bring in tens of thousands of illegal immigrants captured at Kamala Harris's intentionally broken, southwestern border with Mexico. These illegals, unsurprisingly at least, the vast majority of them turn out to be more, I know you're shocked, more than economic migrants who are going to do the tough jobs that no natural-born Americans want to do, as the left absolutely loves to claim. Instead, as you can see, they are the very violent criminals who are now conquering the streets of some of our greatest cities. And the gangs are not just taking over the streets of our biggest cities, they're spreading out wherever these so-called charities happen to be with the help of the corrupt Kamala Harris regime, where these charities are placing them. Even in small towns like, as you've heard reported here before, like Aurora, Colorado. How'd you like to wake up in your small, sleepy, somewhat quaint town only to have a visit from these thugs demanding that you pay them protection money or else? Not a single one of these violent gang members would have been here if it was not for the intentionally failed policies of America's border czar and current Democratic Party presidential nominee, Kamala Harris. We should note that even Democrat law firm Perkins Coie confirmed that these gangs have taken over apartment complexes in Aurora. The report, which was marked confidential, outlined a terrifying portrait of anarchy and violence. A property manager repeatedly had his life threatened and was nearly assassinated. The manager said that gang members stabbed a resident for refusing to pay, quote unquote, rent to the gang. The manager also recorded footage of gang members knocking on doors and without authorization or any other justification, attempting to collect rent from the tenants. But that's just another day of life under the Biden-Harris administration, paying rent to imported gangsters. And joining us now is Terry Newsome. As noted before, he's the man behind the popular podcast series Behind Enemy Lines, and the enemy lines seem to be growing, I would say. Terry, he's a Chicagoan who truly means behind enemy lines because he goes behind them. Terry, good to see you again. I don't know if you've seen the Perkins Coie report, and I'll just remind my audience and maybe you, because I think we're springing this on you. Perkins Coie is the group, the law firm that was tied to the Steele dossier and is sort of a fixer entity for Hillary Clinton. So it's a bit surprising to see them, even in a leaked confidential report, confirm that these gangs are real and they really are taking over apartment buildings and taking over towns.
Yes, especially in Chicago. They're moving out to the western suburbs. They're moving out to my neighborhood. The president of my HOH just called me 2 nights ago. She knows what I do. And a doctor on my street, a block and a half down from where we live right now, my family, a Venezuelan gang. I'm not saying this gang's Tren de Aragua. They robbed the doctor's house when he was gone. It's on my street in the suburb. Nice. So obviously, there's a doctor down the block, and they're also going into the gas stations. When people go into the gas stations, they have a woman going broken English, looking for sympathetic $5 for gas, and then the men are going through the cars at the gas pumps. So this stuff is everywhere, and thanks to people like you, thanks for Dana from the New York Post covering this and exposing it. I had a conversation right before I got on your show with an investigative reporter from WGN. And he's like, well, I don't want to hear about your narrative. Show me the evidence. I said, this is the first time in history I've ever heard of Chicago Police Department police reports being called narratives. You have the police reports. You have the pictures. Oh, well, I could take pictures of Hispanics wearing Bulls hats. I go, are you kidding me? The guy ended up hanging up on me. They don't want to show the truth.
He called himself an investigative reporter, yet he never bothered to go and obviously pull you the information, the police reports that you, a citizen journalist, have obtained.
Yeah, yeah. He goes, well, I spoke to Cook County Sheriff Department. I go, I spoke to City of Chicago game crimes people. They're here. He's saying they're not. There's no evidence that they're here. I'm like, it's just absurd. So that's, shows like yours are the biggest platform outside of Dana's and stuff. We have to show this. We got real, you're showing real evidence, right? And Chicago is what? A blue Democratic city. So are you telling me that these police officers are making up this fake narrative? It's not a fake narrative. It's true. And as a matter of fact, it's even worse than what they're saying it is. A story came out today, too. The city of Chicago public school systems, Hispanic, non-English speaking went up 12.5%, while African American went down 2. They're flooding the area in a big, big way. Yes, there's some nice innocent asylum seekers. Okay, great. I still don't think we should take them in until we could take care of ourselves. As a matter of fact, we should
Yeah.
stop until we make up for the 20 million. So you want to pump it in? Okay, we have to stop it now because you're so far ahead of the curveball. We're going to hold off and figure out how many more years before we open it up to accommodate for what you guys did to us. Sorry, I
Well, and
get tired.
look, I mean, I get it, and I agree. I mean, we're obviously not able to take care of the people in the Appalachian Mountain region, the Smoky Mountains, who have been hit so hard with this flooding. I just, while we're sitting here talking, I got a text message from a gentleman there saying that his brother had flown in supplies into rural North Carolina, and he saw no response teams there in an airport. But yet we're bringing in, flooding our country with all of these people that we say, we're giving cars to, as you've reported on exclusively, giving phones to, as you, Terry Newsome, have reported on exclusively, and housing and all these other resources. Displacing also the very much in need homeless population of Chicago. I want to touch on something you just said, because you said you don't know if it's Tren de Aragua. It could be another gang. We only talk about Tren de Aragua. How many Venezuelan gangs potentially are there here in the United States?
Well, so the ones when I first came across them, I knew they were a gang. I didn't know they were Tren de Aragua until New York reported on that police officer that got
Okay.
built up, right? So then I started investigating and seeing, oh wow, that's the same gang signs from Tren de Aragua, right? So they're wearing their hats, they're wearing their colors, they're proud. So I don't. To answer your question, I'm not sure. I know there's not just one gang in South America, right? Then we have the Haitians, we have the different nationalities, we've got the Colombians. And when we talk about this gang war, right, I don't think it's going to happen until next summer. Anything could spark it off. Just last week, an African American guy was shot 3 times in the head in the Southside gas station while he's pleading for his life by a Venezuelan. He's been here for 4 months. Shot the guy in the head at the gas station. Something like that could trigger it. But in next summer, when these guys get more established, more settled in, you got to remember these Venezuelans are from where? South America. Who's the big cocaine cartels, right? The Cali cartel, Medellin, all those other guys from Colombia. They're going to have embedded relationships by far that exceed the African American relationships. They're going to snowball. They're going to grow their drug business in a big, big way,
Yeah.
and where they're going to have to expand. As for the crime, right? For what just happened in my house, not my house, my neighborhood. Well, are they going to go and rob African American houses? Heck no. I mean, they might, the idiots that can't, the organized crime that's happening in my mall here where they're coming in and organized shoplifting and stuff, that's going to happen in the suburbs, right? You want to go to a doctor's
Yeah.
house where you have the opportunity to get the biggest bang for your buck when you go in and rob somebody. It's going to happen more and more as they get comfortable.
And they
They
learn more of the areas too, right, of where to go. They're still figuring out the lay of the land. Let me ask you real quick, because we're approaching a very pivotal election, and there's some concern about potential chaos either before or right after election. You don't think a great gang war will spark prior to the election? You foresee it more as happening next summer. So that's not
yeah,
going
I
to be
don't
a black swan type of, or whatever, an unexpected event we should look out for.
Yeah, yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen because
Okay.
these guys, to your point, getting situated, right, and weapons and stuff. The African American guys got all kinds of weapons and drugs and money, right? These guys have to, start acquiring those. Those things don't happen. Yes, you could get small when you go and fight
Mhm.
against a gang that's been established since 1950, 1960s, right? The Gangster Disciples or all these other gangs. You just don't go to war without your military having weapons to fight back. So that's the only thing. There'll be little skirmishes and stuff. But once they get settled in and then they see all how those they're going to probably try to collaborate with them and they're going to fight. There's going to be egos. They're going to fight amongst themselves. Latin kings and probably Tren de Aragua might want to try to unify. But you got to remember, if you're a leader from Venezuela, right? You're a gang leader. why are you going to relinquish your power and authority to a Latin king, even though you're, Spanish? So I think they might
Fair.
unify. I think they're going to divide when egos and power and control come into play on the Spanish side, as well as the African American side. No different than what we talked about 100 years ago between the Irish and the Italian fighting over liquor.
That's why we have to hope for a positive outcome in this election, because then you have time to deport, you have time to really crack down. Terry Newsome, this is not enough discussed in the right perspective, I think, and what it really means and how you fix it. Thank you, Terry Newsome, for your continued coverage of this very pivotal problem facing America, not just the big cities anymore. It's now filtering in the small towns. So it's a problem that affects all of us. Be sure to catch his podcast, Behind Enemy Lines, because we've touched on it a little bit, but Terry goes very much in depth with exclusive footage and interviews. Terry, thank you.
Thank you. Look us up on Rumble, Behind Enemy Lines.
Rumble.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks.